Journalists Roundtable is a half-hour discussion with Pennsylvania journalists about the week's top political news and current events. Journalists Roundtable is a production of PCN, a nonprofit television network. Listeners like you make our programming possible. To learn more about PCN's mission and to support PCN with a donation, visit PCNTV.com. This link and others can be found in our show notes. We appreciate your support.
Welcome to a very special episode of Journalists Roundtable. I'm Ellen Franz. Our reporters today are all on the staff at university newspapers across Pennsylvania. Joining us today are Amber Medved, senior staff writer at the Pitt News at the University of Pittsburgh, and Kahlie Wray, managing editor with the Daily Collegian at Penn State University. Welcome, everyone. So first, we're going to start with Amber. Higher education has been in the news a lot recently due to federal cuts on things such as research. How has the University of Pittsburgh been impacted?
Yeah, there has been a lot of uncertainty surrounding research funding, especially because Pitt relies a lot on research. We're a very heavy research school. So, of course, there's a lot of worry and a move towards advocating for funding. I would say that while there has been some areas that have been impacted, especially in the STEM field, Pitt actually has made a few advancements with funding. So there's been a little back and forth while there have been worries for federal funding. Some areas have seen an increase, so it really depends on the department or area.
Kahlie, could you talk a little bit about federal funding impacting Penn State?
I can. Last August, Penn State is a very big STEM school, STEM-wise. And I remember last August, due to the federal funding, we lost about 40 research grants, all which were related to science and technology. So we took a pretty big hit in that area. We have something called the Faculty Senate here that advocates for faculty and people who commit research. And they've been really trying to work towards getting Penn State to, one, sign a compact with other Big Ten universities to sort of fight back and to get this funding back, and to find other ways to fund the research that lost the funding. I'm not really sure of what other fields at Penn State have been impacted as much as STEM, though.
Now, Kahlie, while I have you, one of the Daily Collegian's investigative reporters looked into Penn State's free speech ranking as made by FIRE, which stands for the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expressions. What was the school's ranking?
So our school ranking, so we looked at the rankings over the last 5 years since it started in 2021 to 2025. And essentially the story was about how it was a steady decrease until last year where there was an upcrease. I don't want to misquote the correct number, but I believe we rose 10 ranks, which was surprising to some people. So we sort of looked into why we suddenly increased up in the ranks so heavily, and we talked to people here at Penn State and other people about if they thought this ranking was correct, because Penn State is currently being sued by Uncensored America for not abiding by the First Amendment. So we spoke with them and their founder on how they felt about FIRE's ranking. And we also spoke with student activists here on campus about how they felt about Penn State's free speech climate, and we looked at all of that, sort of building off the fact that, well, in the beginning, we were below. So this year was the first year where we made a score that made us compliant, because FIRE has red, yellow, and green, and we were always in the red. And then for last year's ranking, we were suddenly in the yellow. So we kind of just looked at that and we asked people how they felt about that.
What did the student activists say? Did they say that this was a good enough score, or that it could be better, or that they didn't agree with it?
We had mixed reactions. So we spoke with the two largest sort of student groups, the Penn State College Republicans, the Penn State College Democrats. The Penn State College Republicans said they agreed with the score and they felt that Penn State had a very good free speech climate. The Penn State College Democrats did not really agree, as well as Uncensored America also disagreed with FIRE's ranking about first for the last year. They felt that Penn State had displayed scenarios in the last year where it impeded their free speech, so they felt that FIRE's ranking was incorrect.
What were some of these scenarios that they felt impeded on their free speech?
So Penn State is it's funny in the sense that we're a large campus. So on a day-to-day basis, we have speakers who come and they draw large crowds because of whatever message they're trying to send. But Penn State has specific rules about how these speakers operate. So for example, the main one is that they cannot amplify sound, and you also have to rent the certain area by a certain time. So last year, Riley Gaines, an activist, was to come to our school, but she in I don't want to say she was denied because that would be the incorrect language, but essentially what the Democrats in Central America was saying, that she was not allowed to come to the space, but the Penn State is saying that that didn't happen because she didn't book the space in time. And we've also had scenarios where people have used the microphones and speakers, which is incorrect. So they've been removed from the space. So in that sense, we had some people saying, okay, that's impeding on our First Amendment. But other people were saying, well, that's just the rule here. And then we had the college Republicans who were saying that Penn State has been very helpful when it comes to helping them host quote unquote controversial speakers. Like, for example, the Penn State administration really helped them host their memorial for Charlie Kirk last semester. So they were like, no, Penn State helps us a lot. So there was mixed reactions. And there was also the fact that in 2024, Penn State had removed the Daily Collegian's newsstands for a few days. So that also affected people's opinions on whether or not Penn State had a good free speech comment.
Now, Amber, Pitt did not go through this ranking by fire, but what have you heard from students regarding the status of free speech on Pitt's campus?
I'm not sure exactly what ranking system we were using, but we also dropped in free ranking or free speech rankings. And through interviews, again, with both Pitt college Democrats and college Republicans, we were kind of seeing the same issue of students feeling like they were feeling censored, both sides politically, actually. Some more socially in classes through professors, or classmates, especially regarding issues of Israel and Palestine. And college Democrats also felt censored, again, with issues of Palestine, because we have had protests on campus, especially the last few years, that have kind of been censored in some ways, or there has been talk of there being censorship surrounding protests. And especially regarding identities for Jewish students, interviewing Jewish students, especially on campus, they feel like they've been censored. So I would say that there has been kind of an air on campus of a decrease in free speech.
Now, Amber, in December, you wrote how the Pitt Educational Policies Committee debated on if the university should ban cell phones in classrooms. Why did they want to do that?
AI has especially been a huge issue in our schools, especially because Pittsburgh is a very large AI hub. There's been a lot of debates, not around only AI usage, but also data centers in the area. And so in the classroom, we have seen a lot of struggles with AI and how professors are grappling with that fact. And while the committee didn't reach a decision on banning cell phones, a lot of the people that I interviewed, professors, students, have shown kind of an understanding that we do need technology in classrooms. And that's kind of the general consensus, that technology may be necessary in classrooms, but there has to be an adjustment. So the Senate is still kind of figuring out what to put in like syllabi regarding AI and whether that should be a university-wide policy or more up to the discretion of professors. So that's kind of still in the works. There have been many events on campus where we have speakers come in and debate the pros and cons of using AI and how it can be ethically or unethically used. So that's still in the process, but it's been a very large conversation on campus.
Can you give some examples for those who are watching who may not be familiar on how students can have been using AI that may not, the professors may not be okay with?
ChatGPT is a big one. Generative AI in general, that's been the main usage of AI that has been considered unethical by both students and professors based on interviews. However, there have been some AI usages introduced, such as Claude, that was recently introduced on Pitt's campus as a university supported um, usage of AI, and have been different reactions from professors and students based on that. Not everyone is supportive of it, but the university is kind of leaning towards a more quote unquote ethical AI approach.
Now, Kahlie, the Daily Collegian released an editorial about how the university should embrace AI usage. Why did they think that?
So we were having a conversation like amongst ourselves, the editorial board, about sort of like the increase in AI usage. And on one hand, we were like, well, it sort of like impedes our ability to think and to learn. But on the other hand, we just sort of like came to the consensus that AI was not going to go away. And we felt that the university owed it to us and to students to show us how to use it ethically. Because from our conversations with our peers and seeing what our peers doing, people are sort of using AI in secret, and they're using it in very unethical ways. And we were sort of like calling on the university to teach people how to use AI as a tool and not to use it to do your work, but how to use it in aid of your work, and how to be ethical about that usage, knowing how when to say that, hey, I use ChatGPT or I use Claude for this. This is how I use it, and how to essentially like show your work. And that's why we did that.
What are Penn State's current policies regarding AI? Do they have any in place?
It depends on the professor. So we have some professors that are like absolutely no AI, and you have other professors who are like, if you use AI, cite it in your work, cite it. It depends. In the AI realm, Penn State has recently introduced not a full degree, but sort of like an AI certificate that you can get. So that's what they've sort of done since the rise of generative AI and just AI in general.
Now back to you, Amber. At the end of January, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette announced it was closing. What led to this?
There's been kind of a larger movement of traditional media and its decline in Pennsylvania with the closure of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. That's kind of the biggest example in Pittsburgh, especially. And kind of larger media outlets getting less funding or less support from the public, less trust from the public. So journalists such as a few at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette have kind of banded together to create Paper, which is kind of a grassroots movement to support maybe some voices in Pittsburgh that haven't been heard by the Post-Gazette, they've said, kind of supporting more minority voices, especially when I talked to them, they talked about supporting Black voices and kind of helping to maybe correct some of the maybe harmful history of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and kind of moving towards a more inclusive media space.
Now, along with the closure, the Pittsburgh City Paper was relaunched in March. Between the founding of Paper, which stands for the Pittsburgh Alliance for People-Empowered Reporting, and also the relaunching of the Pittsburgh City Paper, what does that say about the need for journalism in the city?
I think it says that people want ethical, open journalism. And although in the past we may have seen like less funding or less trust, people are moving towards this want for community-based journalism and media that highlights the stories of a diverse group of people.
Now, you work on a college newspaper where many of your colleagues on this paper may want to get into journalism as a career. How are they feeling watching these big publications like the Post-Gazette close?
I know some people on our staff kind of have ties to the Post-Gazette. So seeing the Post-Gazette announce its closure was a little disheartening, and it's worrying for students who want to go into journalism and media and communications. but we're trying to find ways to go into journalism and kind of adjust approaches because we can't really control everything. So we want to see how we can still create ethical journalism and still talk to people and get people's stories out.
Kahlie, why is it important for you to have a free press that's easily accessible to all people?
I think for me especially, I'm from Jamaica, so a small country. So we really only have two large news organizations and they can only cover so much. So I think when I came to the US and I started coming to journalism and I sort of saw all these outlets and all these wide ranges of like all these people reporting facts, opinions, and what entails of journalism. The thing I think it's important that we have a free press because it helps people make decisions and how to like operate in their daily life. Like I will say, like for Penn State, and our student paper, and obviously our large audience is students, and it's important that we aren't censored by the university because we help students make decisions and know what's happening in their community. So, for example, when the board of trustees decides to raise tuition or lower tuition, we let students know about that. And when they decide to do other things that may not be favorable in students' eyes, it's us who tell students this, and so they can sort of try to make a difference by talking to the university, protesting, and how we decide to make a difference. So I think it's very important for a pre-press because we don't know how to operate in this world without a pre-press because then we won't know what's going on.
On the topic of the Penn State Board of Trustees, the university released its budget for the 2027-28 fiscal year. What details stood out to you?
So what stood out to me specifically, probably because I'm a comm major, is that the Belisari Communications College received a raise, and so did some other like liberal arts college, or like the liberal arts college received a raise, which stood out to me because I just feel as though we're sort of like going into an era where liberal arts degrees and communication degrees are slowly being devalued. So I thought it was interesting that those colleges received an increase in funding. That was interesting, and obviously, one of like the most contentious things sort of like around the Penn State community at large is the fact that the Commonwealth campuses will be closing. So we were sort of looking at how that made changes in the budget and where different allocations were.
Yeah, there is 6 Commonwealth satellite campuses closing. How did those? How does that impact the budget for this upcoming year?
So right now, according to the board of trustees, the 7 Commonwealth campuses will close in the spring of 2027 for budget reasons. They said there was like low enrollment. They couldn't they couldn't afford it. They were like making money off those 7 campuses. I didn't really personally see, or nor did me or my peers point out to me like points in this budget where it seemed as if that impacted the budget. And I think it's because the University Park is sort of unique in a sense. It is a part of like the wider Penn State range and campus, but it does stand out in the sense that it is the largest one and it has the most students and it sort of like operates as its own thing in some sense.
Now, due to budget cuts from the federal government for public broadcasting, State College's local PBS affiliate, WPSU, was set to close until WHYY out of Philadelphia took it over. What impact do those funds have not being included in the school's budget?
I'm not sure I will say that WPSU is sort of like the only station that a lot of people in this area of Pennsylvania have access to. So that was sort of very disheartening when we first heard that they were going to cut the budget. Even when WHI did do it, Penn State declined to fund that transition, so they had to like use like GoFundMe and other ways to fund that. So that was also telling about like the board of trustees priorities in that sense. We are unsure where the funding that would have been going to WPSU is going now, or I should say I am unsure.
Is any of this budget going to affect student tuition?
We're not sure. I mean, they still have it in the upcoming board of trustees meetings. We'll hear more about whether tuition will increase or decrease. I can't guess to what they'll do.
Amber, you are an education major and you write a lot about education, especially in the city of Pittsburgh. What is the state of K through 12 education in Pittsburgh looking like these days?
I'd say there's a lot of fear and again uncertainty surrounding education, especially in the higher education space at Pitt. In the School of Education, there's a lot of worry going into the field with larger kind of national administrations, but there's also been a lot of support within people going into education and kind of camaraderie of kind of knowing that we want to do this for a good purpose. And although there are a lot of fears, especially with kind of ICE and with more diverse student populations, teachers have kind of been creating plans as to how to address fears in education, how to address underfunding, and how to move forward in a way that is equitable and supportive of students.
Can you talk a little bit about what some of those plans are?
A lot of, I know in Pittsburgh public schools, in that district, teachers have kind of created plans as to what to do if like an ICE officer approached a school. And I know a few weeks ago, there was kind of a scare that there was an ICE officer at a Pittsburgh public school. And that fear was founded to be untrue. There was never an ICE officer at the school, but there was community fear. And that showed really larger fears for our students and how to support their needs in such a fearful political environment. But teachers will especially post like signage in their classrooms of rights for students, and they'll have meetings about what to do, whether or not they should let officers in their classrooms or not, whether or not that's allowed. And that's kind of been a conversation at the university too. A lot of professors are worried about what to do if ICE officers were to come on campus. And although we haven't really seen that happen yet, we have seen a lot of plans that are being made of how to kind of stop that movement.
Kahlie, you wrote a lot about Thon, which is Penn State's big annual fundraiser. Can you explain a little bit of background about what Thon is for people who are watching who may not know?
Yes, so Thon is Penn State's annual 48 standing dancing marathon, I should say, and it's in support of ending childhood cancer. So essentially, this year we had around 700 dancers. So 700 people sort of prepare up until the weekend in February, where they then stand in the Bryce Jordan Center on the floor for 48 hours straight to support childhood cancer research to ending it. And I believe it was over $17 million that was raised. They increase every year. It's been going on for years. It first started down in the White Building, which is another place on campus, and it has just like slowly expanded. And I know other schools, other universities have started to do something similar. Like I know Villanova has Nova Dance, and it's a very important cause to the Penn State community. It's one of sort of like the highlight of the spring semester, I would say. It's very important. It takes a long time to prepare for Thon. They've already started fundraising for next Thon already. So it takes like a year of preparation, and there are a lot of moving parts.
Now, before we run out of time, what are some issues that are important to college students that you are hearing about on campus and reporting on? Amber, do you want to start first?
I'd say going back to the issue of ICE, that's been one of the main concerns around campus with professors and people on staff and in higher education, but also with students. We're worried about people in our communities, students, especially international students. That's one of the biggest fears. And another issue that's been a big concern among students is, again, AI. It's a huge conversation. Many students on campus use AI, but we're also contending with how to use it ethically and how to contend with that.
And Kahlie, what have you been hearing on Penn State's campus of some concerns that students have?
I think the biggest concern right now is whether or not Penn State will comply with certain federal orders. And obviously, we have people on both sides of the aisle with that. And then we also have people who are worried about ICE immigration officers. We haven't had any reports of them being on campus, but we have had them near the surrounding area. So people are worried about that. And people are also worried about whether or not Penn State is properly preparing them for the job market and concerns such as those.
All right, that'll be it for today. Our guests today have been Kahlie Wray, managing editor with the Daily Collegian at Penn State University, and Amber Medved, senior staff writer with the Pitt News at the University of Pittsburgh. Thank you both for joining us. That's it for this special college edition of Journalist Roundtable. I'm Ellen Frantz. Thanks for watching.
Full episodes of politics and policy content like the program you just listened to are available to stream with the PCN Select app. Discover other shows like the Capitol Preview, On the Issues, candidate interviews, and more. To learn more about PCN's mission and to support PCN with a donation, visit pcntv.com. This link and others can be found in our show notes. We appreciate your support.